Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the SNP motion that has been tabled in my name and those of my right honourable friends, which calls for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza from all combatants. And I wish to put on record, once again, our unequivocal condemnation of the Hamas attack of October the 7th, and repeat both our call for the immediate release of all the hostages and to see those involved in those atrocities called to account for their actions.
Hear, hear.
The war in Gaza is one of the great defining moments of our time. Yet until today, this House has not been given the opportunity to debate both the unfolding human catastrophe and the wider implications for regional and global stability. Nor have we had the opportunity to debate the urgent and pressing need for an immediate ceasefire as an essential first step to finding a lasting and just peace. Mr. Speaker, no one would deny that Israel has the right to defend itself. Every country has that right. What no country has the right to do, however, is to lay siege to a civilian population, carpet bomb densely inhabited areas, drive people from their homes, erase an entire civilian infrastructure and impose a collective punishment involving the cutting off of water, electricity, food and medicine from civilians. And no country, regardless of who they are, in the name of self-defence, can kill civilians at such a pace and on such a scale that in just 16 weeks, almost 30,000 are known to have died, with a further 80,000 injured. Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow the core principle of self-defence to be so ruthlessly exploited and manipulated in order to legitimise the slaughter of innocent civilians. If we do that, then what hope is there for the future of international rules-based order? An order created to protect people from atrocities, not to be used as a smokescreen to hide the execution of them. If we accept what Israel is doing in Gaza as the new norm, as the new accepted standard of self-defence, then we undermine that core principle which is meant to protect and defend us. And therefore we cannot accept that what is happening now is self-defence, not just because of the precedent that it will send. And I have no doubt that that thought contributed to the United States issuing its clearest warning yet to Netanyahu, that they would not support his proposed ground offensive in Rafah. And this is why the UN Security Council are currently debating a ceasefire. And as we speak today, and even the US have recognised that a ceasefire must happen for a peaceful political solution. Of course, it does not go nearly far enough, but it does show that things are moving, opinions are changing, and the guarantees Israel has come to rely upon are gradually withdrawing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think there are very few people, not only in this House, but in this country at the moment, who would differ from the sentiments being expressed by the Scottish National Party spokesperson here today. We all watch with horror each night the torture of the people in Gaza, and we remember every morning the pain being felt by the families whose loved ones are being held hostage. But would the honourable member not agree with me that we would serve their cause so much better, and ourselves in this place, if we built a consensus behind an opinion today, rather than indulging in petty party politics, which serves no one well?
I thank the honourable lady for the intervention. I'm not quite sure she means about petty party politics and the behaviour we're seeing today has been pretty petty, but we are all about consensus. Anything that can build a consensus for peace, which has to be based around peace, justice and an immediate ceasefire, then we will be there.
Very grateful for the honourable member for giving way. If I could just highlight something that I think is more important than some of the conversations we've had to this moment. On Monday, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights released a statement saying that UN experts had uncovered that Israeli forces in Gaza and the West Bank are being accused of egregious human rights abuses, including arbitrary detention, extrajudicial killings and sexual violence, including rape. The Israeli government, of course, have dismissed this without any investigation. Does the honourable member agree with me that this government should be pushing hard for a proper investigation for people to be held to account for these kinds of gross human rights abuses?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with my honourable friend. I think it is vitally important that whether it's a perceived ally or a perceived foe, an egregious breach of human rights is an egregious breach of human rights and should be taken as exactly that and should be investigated without fear or favour.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. I think one of the things which has defined this House over the last couple of years has been the unity over Ukraine, and it's been really important that we've all stood together on all sides against Putin. Can I just appeal to my honourable friend to reflect on what's required of all of us today? Because the issue is one of principle, of those that are facing famine and death in Gaza. And it's important on all of us across this House to show the appropriate leadership, to come together, to speak up against the human rights abuses that are taking place. And woe betide any of us that fail to show that particular leadership. Now is the time, today is the time, for this House to come together and stand up for those in Palestine that need our support.
I do agree with my honourable friend, and I think we all have a part to play in bringing peace and saving innocent lives. So I was somewhat surprised to hear the Shadow Foreign Secretary on Sunday when he seemed to dismiss and downplay the importance of this debate when he said on the radio, it's not this vote that will bring about a ceasefire. And of course, he is right. Voting for an immediate ceasefire today won't by itself bring about the end of the slaughter. But the impact and the optics of this Parliament, hitherto one of Israel's staunchest allies, saying enough is enough and calling for an immediate ceasefire, would be enormous. And while not in and of itself able to bring about a ceasefire, support for this motion would further remove that ever-thinning veil of legitimacy that the UK's continued support gives to Israel's merciless war in Gaza. And it would show the beleaguered and battered people of Palestine that we do care and that we have not forgotten them. And calling for an immediate ceasefire would also be a pivotal moment in the campaign to stop UK arms sales to Israel. Because as the South African Foreign Minister said last week, the decision to stop the fighting in Gaza is in the hands of the countries that supply Israel with their weapons. And who knows, it might actually help some of the UK's political establishment and those seeking to aspire to that position to locate their moral compass.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. He refers to the way of stopping the conflict. Does he not agree with me that the only way, the most certain way of ending this conflict is by Hamas releasing the hostages, including the 9-month-old baby who was kidnapped by Hamas? And if Hamas released the hostages straight away, that is a surefire way to ceasefire, and that's what we should be talking about.
Send a motion.
I think the very first sentence I said was we utterly condemn the Hamas attack and we implore them to release the hostages, but there has to be a pathway to reaching that. And so the Shadow Foreign Secretary, when he said that this would not bring about a ceasefire, was right. But to try and downplay the importance of this motion does not serve him well. And I do suspect that these moments do not come around very often, as he knows, and he understands only too well the importance of tonight's vote. Because it's moments like these, which shape the ethical identity of a country. And it's the decisions that we take now which will reverberate down the decades, and they will define who we are and what we stand for. And that is why we are calling so clearly and unambiguously for an immediate ceasefire. Because anything else presupposes that there can be a military solution to this conflict. And any other form of words threatens to give credence to the idea that Israel, by dint of deploying its massive military capacity in Gaza, that will somehow be enough to destroy Hamas. When in reality, as everyone knows, and indeed history tells us, the only possible solution to this crisis is a political solution.
For the purpose of clarity, I could understand his argument better if he were talking about what the Americans seem to call a temporary ceasefire to see if more hostages could be released. But he appears to be calling for an unconditional ceasefire, which, and I see people nodding, which would leave all the hostages at the mercy of Hamas. And does not that put Israel in the position where previously they had to release 1,000 people who had been criminally convicted to get one soldier back, and one of the people they released was the person who organised the Hamas atrocities on the 7th of October.
I thank the honourable member for that. I am absolutely clear. There has to be a roadway, there has to be a path towards peace, and that has to start with an immediate ceasefire. If it doesn't, then there is no pathway. I will address directly the issue of humanitarian pauses in a moment. But, Mr Speaker, when the SNP last called for a vote on a ceasefire on the 15th of November, the death toll in Gaza stood at 11,320, already a heartbreaking number of people killed. Just yesterday, Johns Hopkins University and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine released their analysis, which showed that if this conflict continues on the same trajectory, there will be between 58,000 and 75,000 additional civilian Palestinian deaths in the next 6 months. So we know categorically what the consequences of inaction will be. And no one can in the future claim that they did not know or that they did not understand the consequences of what they were doing tonight.
My honourable friend give way?
Absolutely.
Very grateful to him for giving way. Does my honourable friend agree that while some rules may be more malleable than others, the rules of international law are very clear on self-defence, and that the use of self-defence must be proportionate, and that on any view, 30,000 civilians dead, the majority of whom are women and children, is excessive and not a proportionate use of force?
I thank the honourable friend for that, and she's absolutely right. And the danger that we have is if we accept Israel's response as being the new norm, then the danger that everybody across the world, regardless of their circumstances, are put in is terrifying. It's a terrifying example to set and a terrifying precedent which should worry us all, and I thank her for that intervention. And to address the point from earlier on from the honourable member, if no one can argue, I believe, with any credibility on what they used to call, and some people still do, humanitarian pauses, that convoluted idea of an organised fixed-term pause in the killing, one which would allow emergency aid into Gaza only to have the carnage resume at a pre-arranged date and time. And I think that should be seen for what it always was, a smokescreen for politicians to hide behind while waiting to see which direction the wind of public opinion might blow. Well, we have seen the way that public opinion is blowing across the world and here in the UK, with millions taking to the streets and polls showing 75% support plus for an immediate ceasefire. And the harsh reality is that the government, having expended so much political and diplomatic capital on defending and justifying Israel's prosecution of this war, now finds itself stuck on the wrong side of global opinion. And consequently, the UK's international reputation has been so diminished that when the process of finding a just, lasting peace in the region does begin, the UK will struggle to play a meaningful part in it. So if this government cannot see the long-term damage that it is doing, then it's up to this House to tell them by demanding that immediate ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire which has already been endorsed by Pope Francis, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, the Archbishop of York, Scotland's Catholic bishops, the Catholic bishops of the Conference of England and Wales, the Church of England's House of Bishops, the Muslim Council of Britain, the Quakers, the leaders of the Methodists and the United Reformed Church, the Lutheran World Federation, the UN Secretary-General, the UN General Assembly President, UNICEF, the World Food Programme, the World Health Organization, Save the Children, Amnesty, Médecins Sans Frontières, Oxfam, ActionAid, the International Rescue Committee, Action Against Hunger, Care International, Medical Aid for Palestinians, the Council for Arab-British Understanding, the Balfour Project, Islamic Relief, Christian Aid, War on Want, the Carter Centre, War Child, Unite the Union, Unison, the King Centre, World Vision, WaterAid, Tear Fund, Street Child, Star Network, Peace Direct, Mercy Corps, Civicus, and scores more of churches, NGOs, charities and individuals who have seen Israel completely abandon international humanitarian law by imposing their collective punishment on a defenceless civilian population. A civilian population in which just 16 weeks an estimated 18,000 Palestinian children have been left without a single living relative.
The honourable member for giving way. The only way we can ensure a permanent end to the cycle of violence is by facilitating the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state alongside Israel. The main blocker to this is Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has doubled down on his opposition to an independent Palestinian state. Does my honourable friend agree that the UK must show strong opposition to Netanyahu's plans by unilaterally recognising the state of Palestine as a matter of urgency?
I could not agree more with my honourable friend. Absolutely. The United Kingdom has shown a dereliction of duty towards the Palestinians, and we have been very, very supportive and will continue to be supportive of a Palestinian state. But all of those organisations and individuals and churches that I listed, they will not ignore the evidence of their own eyes, nor will they turn a deaf ear to the cries of suffering Palestinians, and neither should we. Mr. Speaker, the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish once wrote, "In silence we become accomplices, but when we speak, every word has the power to change the world." So as I bring these remarks to a close, I want to share with the House the words of those being forced to live through this hell every single day. 30-year-old Islam Harb lost 3 of his 4 children, along with his mother, 2 of his sisters and both his brothers, when a missile hit their home. Islam said, "My family spent days trying to dig the remains of the dead out of the rubble. The body of my brother Khalil was found 200 metres away from the house due to the power of the strike, in pieces. My children's small bodies were torn to pieces." His surviving sister, Ahlam, added, "My brother Mohammed was only recognised by his hair. nothing was left of my brother Khalil except his hand. And 30-year-old Ahmad Nassam, a physiotherapist, lost his wife and 3 children, aged 5, 4 and just 3 months, along with both of his parents and his sister when a missile hit their home. He said it took him 4 days to retrieve the body of his baby daughter, Isla, from the rubble. She was only recognised by the clothes she was wearing. That same blast decapitated his 5-year-old daughter, Arwa. He said, when the war started, I had only one mission in my life: to protect my children. I wish I were with them when the house was hit. My body survived, but my spirit died with my children. It was crushed under the rubble with them. And that's why tonight really matters. That's why it'll be times like these for which we are all remembered. We will be remembered for what we did and for what we chose not to do. And for decades hence, people will say to us, you were there, and they will ask us, what did you do? And some will have to say they chose to engage in a debate on semantics over sustainable or humanitarian causes, while others will say that they chose to give Netanyahu both the weapons and the political cover he required to allow him to prosecute his relentless war. But some of us in this House can say, when we saw 30,000 innocent people killed, when we saw almost 100,000 innocent people injured, when we saw tens of thousands of traumatised children with physical and mental damage that will last for the rest of their lives, when we saw 2 million people displaced from their homes, when we saw refugee camps bombed, when we saw hundreds of journalists killed, when we see hospitals reduced to rubble, when we saw places of worship and the people sheltering in them attacked, and when we saw ambulances which had been sent to rescue children being hit by missiles, with those rescued children still inside, at that point we will say that we chose to do everything we possibly could to make it stop. But we also chose to listen. We listened to the International Court of Justice when they determined there were plausible grounds that Israel is in the process of committing genocide. We listened to the anguished pleas of innocent Palestinians begging for our help to make it stop. And we listened to the anger of millions of people from across these islands. And then we used our immensely privileged position as members of this House to demand an immediate ceasefire. So by supporting the SNP's motion tonight calling for that immediate ceasefire, this House can put itself on the side of peace, it can put itself on the side of justice, it can put itself on the side of the people, and it can put itself on the right side of history.
The question is, as on the order, order. Can I just say to members, clapping, I have a list, and I can rule who speaks where. So I think we need to hear a debate, not a debating society. The question is, as on the order paper, I call David Lammy to move the amendment A in the name of the Leader of the Opposition.